So we started the bond valuation chapter on Tuesday. So today, hopefully, we're going to finish the chapter. A couple of important things is, let's just have a quick review. What is a bond? It's tahvil in Turkish, very good. But what is a tahvil? Exactly. If a company needs money, issuing bonds is a way to raise money, basically. So companies can also issue stocks through seasoned equity offerings. And we're going to talk about common stock valuation next week, next chapter. But bond is a debt instrument. So when you buy a bond from a company, you lend money to the company. Okay? And we already know how to calculate the price of bonds, but as a reminder, let's write it. So the structure of cash flows for bonds was something like this. Suppose that you have a 10-year bond, and suppose that you have annual payments. And for this bond, let's assume coupon rate is 8%, and the discount rate is yield to maturity for bonds, and suppose that it is, I don't know, 5%. In that case, what is your annual coupon payment? What is your annual coupon payments? Coupon rate is 8%. Do you remember how to calculate coupon payments? Yes? How was it? We do coupon rate times the face value. And I said, if we don't say anything, face value is always $1,000. So the coupon payment is 8% times 1,000. So the annual coupon payment is $80. So you have $80 payments each year from the bond issuer. Let's say from IBM, you bought this bond. And you know that every year for 10 years, you're going to get $80. And when the bond expires at the maturity, you get your face value back. Okay, so do you remember this cash flow structure? Yes, you do. How do we calculate the price of the bond? In order to buy a bond, you have to pay the price. So for the price, basically we're discounting all those cash flows, right? Remember, the present value of any investment is the present value of all the future cash flows. So for this one, you know that you have 10 coupon payments plus the face value. And we know if we ignore the face value for now, this looks like an annuity. You have fixed payments for a limited period of time. And for this one, price was 80 times PUVUFA, or let's write the formula this time. Just okay. So basically, the formula will look like this, right? So this is the annuity, present value of annuity. You have $80 payments. T is number of payments. How many payments do you have? How many payments do you have for this bond? 10. You have 10 payments, so this should be 10. And at the 10th year, you're going to get 1,000, so this is also 10. What is R? Is it 8%? No, it is 5%. Thank you. We're going to use coupon rate only to calculate the coupon payment. That's it. So we use the coupon rate to calculate coupon payment. We're done with it. Okay? For R, we're going to use yield to maturity, which is the market interest rate, basically. It is what equally risky bonds will provide to you. So it is basically your required rate of return, your minimum acceptable rate to earn from this bond, because this is what equally risky bonds are offering to you. So R is the YTM, so it should be 0.05. This is important. You're using YTM to discount bonds. So without doing any calculations, tell me, what do you expect from the price of the bond? Could you tell me whether it's going to be higher or lower than $1,000? You should be able to, right? Do you remember the relationship between coupon rate and YTM? So coupon rate is the interest payments, basically, the rate on the interest payments. Coupon rate is higher than the yield to maturity, which means you're getting lots of interest payments on this bond. So do you think this bond will be sold at premium, price higher than 1,000, or it will be sold at discount, price lower than 1,000? Okay, who says premium? Who says discount? Premium is higher than 1,000. Who says it should be sold at a discount? Elleri görelim. I'm asking this, whether price will be higher than 1,000, which is the premium case, or price will be lower than 1,000, which is a discount case. Premium, discount. Premium, discount. Huh? Orada yazmıyor ki. Geçelim. So if coupon rate is higher than yield to maturity, then the price should be higher than 1,000. And this is exactly what we have here. Price should be higher than 1,000. Why? Coupon, the interest you obtain from the coupons are already higher than the yield to maturity, which is the return that other bonds are giving to you. So if the price is lower than 1,000 for this bond, it will be too good to be true. So it is paying high coupon payments. On top of it, you're paying less than what you're gonna get at the end of at the maturity. So you're gonna make money from here. You're gonna make 8% return on coupon payments. So in this case, yield to maturity should be way higher than 5%. And it cannot be the case because 5% is what a similar bond is offering to you. If this was the case, you would have a perfect arbitrage opportunity, let's say. It's not exactly arbitrage, but the idea is similar. So for this bond, price should be higher than 1,000. So if you make the calculation, 80 is the payment, future value is 1,000, 5 is the discount rate, N is 10, present value should be equal to 800 then. It should be equal to 1231, which is higher than 1,000 as expected. So in the exam, you can keep this relationship in mind as a double check for your calculations. Yes. Coupon payments are fixed. You know when their timing is. If a company misses a coupon payment, then it is bankruptcy actually. Oh, I never heard something like that. In US, it's almost the semi-annual payments every 6 months. And if not, every year. But I never heard like every 2 years. But when you buy the bond, you know the frequency of payments. It should be 6 months or 1 year. Do you remember the relationship between interest rate and price? So if the interest rate in the economy, yield to maturity, is high, then what do you expect from the price? Low, right? Yield to maturity is your return on the bonds, basically. So if you pay a low price for an investment, your return should be higher, right? So there's a negative relationship between interest rate and price for bonds and actually for everything else. So if you expect interest rates will decrease in the economy, would you buy a bond now or not? You expect interest rates to decrease in the economy? Would you buy a bond now? Exactly. You would buy the bond, and when the interest rates decline, you would expect prices to increase. So you would buy the bond now and sell when the prices increase. Okay? Okay. So there's a negative relationship between interest rate and price. Do you remember the interest rate sensitivity we talked about? Suppose that we have two bonds, equal bonds. One is short term, one is long term. Which one will have more interest rate risk? Long one will have more interest rate risk. What was interest rate risk? The price sensitivity to the changes in interest rate. So in the long term, you have a longer uncertain period of time, basically. In this case, long-term bonds will have more interest rate risk. If long-term bonds have more interest rate risk, would you expect long-term bonds interest rates to be higher or lower than short-term bonds? Higher. It's like no, right? It's higher. If long-term bonds have high interest rate risk, if they're riskier, you would expect their YTMs to be higher as well. Risk and return relationship. High risk should provide you more return, right? If long-term bonds have more interest rate risk, then they should have a higher yield to maturity compared to short-term bonds. Yes?
When interest rate is going down, it means prices going up, and it means it's supposed to be for us.
Yes.
And now we are talking about, in the long term, we are expecting a high interest rate. I'm confused on that.
Oh, okay. So it is normally, okay, forget about the economic conditions and everything. Normally, long-term bonds have higher interest rate risk, so they should be riskier. They should have higher yield to maturity. If it is your expectation, actually we are going to, let's talk about this first. Okay, actually we're talking about yield curve. That is something we just talked about. So what is yield curve? Let me just go into that and then answer your questions. So yield curve is a graph that gives you the relationship between maturity of bonds and their yield to maturities. So here we have the interest rate, here we have the maturities. So this is for a treasury strip, zero coupon bonds issued by US Treasury. And this is called yield curve, which is a very important thing actually to look at for practitioners as well. I actually put a file on Moodle, like a PDF file, a 3-page thing. If you want to read more on yield curves, you can. So normally in this yield curve, what does it mean? A short-term bond have a lower yield to maturity compared to a long-term bond, right? If you have a 20-year bond, its yield to maturity is here. If you have a 3-year bond, its yield to maturity is here. So as you can see, normally in a normal economy, you expect interest rates to increase in the long run. You expect the economy to be well, let's say, in the long run. And in that case, as expected, as we talked about like 1 minute ago, long-term bonds should have higher yield to maturity compared to short-term bonds. But if your expectations about the economy is different, if you're not very optimistic, then you would expect the economy to do worse in the long run. And in that case, you would expect interest rates to decrease in the long run. Because in a crisis time, interest rates will decrease. In that case, yield curve will be downward sloping. It's going to be inverted yield curve. So it's all about economic expectation. Normally, in a normal world, this is what we expect. Higher, longer-term bonds are riskier because of the interest rate risk. They should have higher yield to maturity compared to short-term bonds. So in the long run, you expect interest rates to increase, basically. But if you expect the economy to do worse, then your expectations will change, and this curve will be downward sloping. Actually, we asked it in the exam a couple of years ago. We asked students to draw a yield curve, which is very easy. I'm going to show you how to do it. And then we said, oh, what if this is your expected, what happens to your yield curve? So this is the normal way of seeing yield curve, but it can be just the opposite. I have one question here. If short-term bonds are giving you less return, why would you go with short-term bonds? They're less risky because it's short-term. Less interest rate risk for sure. One more thing. It gives you what? Short-term investment and long-term investment. Huh? It's lower return, but if it is lower return, why do you still prefer it? It's flexibility, right? When you have short-term investments, you can just use the money as the way you want. So you're not like stuck with a 30-year bond. If you buy a 30-year bond, you're kind of stuck. Especially if you expect interest rate to increase, you will never sell your bond until the maturity, right? Oh, let me just ask this. Let's go one step back. If you expect interest rates to increase in the long run, would you sell your 30-year bond in between, before the maturity? Because if interest rates increase, price will decline. So your investment will be worse if you sell it in between, before the maturity. So in that case, if this is your expectation, if you have a 30-year bond, you're stuck with an investment. So instead, you can buy short-term bonds and exchange the money the way you want to. So that's why you can prefer short-term bonds. Okay, so this is the yield curve thing. Do you have any questions about the yield curve? Okay. Let's go back to our interest rate stuff. So we said long-term bonds have high interest rate risk. Then do you remember zero coupon bonds and coupon paying bonds? Which one has more interest rate risk? Zero coupon bonds and coupon paying bonds. Which one do you think have more interest rate risk? Which one is more sensitive to changes in interest rates? Huh? Very good. It was the zero coupon one here. So if you have two equal bonds, one has zero coupon, the other one is paying coupons, then the one which pays coupons has less uncertainty, let's say, because you get money in between. Even if the interest rate changes, you still know that you're going to have a constant amount of money coming to you. With zero coupon bonds, interest rate will immediately affect the value of the face value. Right? If you have a zero coupon bond, you're going to ignore this part. So any changes in the interest rate will directly affect the present value of the face value. So it will affect you more. So if you want a bond with the least risk possible, you're going to go with short-term bonds with coupon payments, right? Short-term bonds with coupon payments. These bonds have the least amount of interest rate risk. Can you think of another risk? What other risk can you think of when I say bonds? If a company cannot pay off a coupon payment or the face value, what happens? Bankruptcy. So another risk related to bonds is the bankruptcy risk, which is also called credit risk, default risk. They're all same thing. So which bonds have the least amount of bankruptcy risk? Lowest bankruptcy risk bonds. Government or company bonds? Government bonds. T-bills or T-bonds? T-bills are short-term ones and T-bonds are long-term ones. T-bills. T-bills have the least amount of risk possible. And actually in the economy, we take T-bills as the risk-free assets. Because we say governments never go bankrupt. If they go bankrupt, they print money, so they are never out of money. But actually we saw in a couple of European cases that governments can also go bankrupt. But they are the least risky ones anyway. So everybody agrees on it. So the difference between the risk-free rate and your company's company bonds rate is called default premium. So how far a company's bond is from bankruptcy is basically your default premium. Okay. So think about as investors, we want the reward for not consuming, not using our money now, right? As consumers, if I'm buying bonds, I want my reward for not consuming my money now. The second one I want is I want my reward for risk, right? So the first part, the reward for basically time value of money, is the risk-free rates. What risk-free rate will give to you. So it's your minimum acceptable, okay? Risk-free rate will give you the reward for waiting. On top of it, for additional risk, you will ask for the risk premium. So if you have interest rate risk, you want more return. If you have bankruptcy risk, you want more return. So every time you take risk, you want more return. Okay, that's important. And you know there are credit rating agencies, and I don't know whether you followed. Yesterday I put a couple of articles on credit ratings, and there was like a little debate going on there. So you know credit rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, they grade governments, they also grade companies' bonds. And they analyze all the risk associated with companies, let's say, and they give different ratings. So the best ratings are what? As at college, A's are good. There's C's, they're bad. So which bonds are riskier, A class or C class? C class are riskier, and risk is all about the probability of bankruptcy. Like C class bonds, let's say junk bonds, the probability of them, like half of them goes bankrupt in the next 10 years, for sure. For AAA companies, it's like less than 1%. The probability of bankruptcy is lower. So the high ones here, good rating ones, are called investment grade, which is they're safe, they will do the coupon payments, they're good, and they're junk bonds. They're riskier, they have lots of bankruptcy probability. So in a world like this, why would you go with a junk bond? Not price, what? More gain, more return. Your expected return from junk bonds are higher. But you're taking risk. In reality, you may lose your money. They may go bankrupt, and you may lose big. But since there's the possibility, because of this possibility, your expected return is higher. So their yield to maturity will be higher. They're riskier. Every time risk is higher, yield to maturity will be higher, right? Risk high, return should be high. Their yield to maturity will be higher. If their yield to maturity is higher, what do you expect from prices? Will they have lower prices compared to investment grade bonds, or higher prices? Lower. They will offer you high yields and low price. Negative relationship between price and yield to maturity. One more thing. Okay, so I said the default premium is all about how far your company is from the risk-free rate. Okay, the riskier your company is, default premium will be higher because it is riskier. Here, we just talk about yield curves. Here, we have yield curves for different investments for US. And as expected, all those yield curves is in the upward sloping case, normal case. And here we have yield to maturity, interest rates. Here we have time to maturity. So as you can see, longer term bonds have higher yield to maturity compared to short term bonds. And let's look at those lines. Here, this is the line for, or without looking at it. So we have the treasury yield curve, treasury bonds yield curve. We have AAA companies yield curve, triple B's companies yield curve, and B companies yield curve. So which one should be the yield curve for the treasury bonds? The highest one or the lowest one? It should be the lowest one, because compared to those three, probably treasury bonds are offering you the smallest yield to maturity because they are the safest one, right? So this should be the yield curve for the treasury bonds. They're safer. Their yield to maturity should be the lowest. And in that case, which one should be the highest one? The risky assets should offer you the highest yield to maturity. In this case, which one is the riskiest one? B. So this should be the curve for B. So the difference between these two is basically the default premium. And for B's, they're the riskier, their default premium is the higher. So if a company's rating decreases, what happens to its yield to maturity? Thank you. If a company's rating decreases, riskiness will increase. In that case, yield to maturity should be higher. We asked something like this in the exam as well before. We said, what happens to the yield curve? Yield curve should shift up. Sorry? So we said, blah, blah, blah company, its rating decreased from, I don't know, AAA to BBB. What happens to its yield curve? So you should immediately say, since rating decreased, riskiness increased, so yield to maturity should increase, so yield curve should shift upwards. Because every time it shifts upwards, yield to maturity will increase, right? You will reach a high yield to maturity point. So this is it. One more thing is, so these are the yield spreads for, here let's say, yield spreads for long-term bonds versus US Treasury bonds. So this is for US data. As expected, or let me ask you, it's here, but when you have a financial crisis, would you expect the spreads for corporations' bonds, the difference between the yield to maturity for corporate bonds and yield to maturity? This is the yield spread. What happens to the yield spread if you're in the crisis time? It should increase, right? Crisis times means more risk. So all the companies' default risk will increase. So their riskiness will increase. In that case, the yield spreads will increase. And this is exactly what we saw in US economy in 2008 crisis. And here is for the spread between LIBOR and US Treasury bonds. And again, as expected, in the crisis times, the spreads goes up. So overall, the volatility in the economy goes up. Okay, risk goes up. Okay, so let me go back to my okay. Okay, so let's talk about, I skipped this one. It's about yield to maturity calculation. I'm not going to go over it. Basically, for yield to maturity calculation, you write down the formula for the price of the bond, which was payment times PUVFA RT plus 1,000 PUF RT. So from here, you should find R basically. You cannot use your calculator or the table to find yield to maturities. You will do trial and error. And for trial and error, the starting point will be look at the relationship between coupon rate and YTM. Let's look at the relationship between price and face value, which will give you the relationship between coupon rate and YTM. And from there, you can start with an, let's say, educated guess. And in the exam, if we ask something like this, you can probably find the answer with 2 trials only. So you're not going to try 5 different numbers if this is where you start. But what is yield to maturity? Yield to maturity is the return on the bond if you buy a bond today and hold it until maturity. Okay, you buy the bond today, you hold it until maturity, it will give you the yield to maturity of the bond. But there is another return on the bond, which might be different if you sell the bond before maturity. So if you buy a 20-year bond, if you sell it 5 years later, your return may not be equal to yield to maturity. In that case, we need to calculate rate of return. What was your return from this investment? So basically, the idea behind rate of return is how much income you generate compared to your investment. That's the basic idea. How much income you earn compared to the money you paid for the investment. For the bond, we will look at if you buy a bond today, hold it for 1 year. In that 1 year, you will have the coupon payments. And then at the end of 1 year, if you sell the bond, you're going to get P1, the price at time 1. And you're going to compare it to the price you paid for the bond. So let me write it here. Okay, so rate of return will be equal to coupon payment plus P1 when you sell the bond minus P0, the amount of money you paid for the bond. So this is basically your price appreciation or price depreciation. If you sell it higher than at a price higher than the price you paid for the bond, then you made money. So you will have price appreciation. In the opposite case, you're going to have price depreciation. So you compare it to the your initial investment. Rate of return doesn't have to be equal to yield to maturity. Okay? There are cases where they're equal. There are cases where they're not equal. So let's look at this question. Okay? Suppose you purchase a 5% coupon bond. Its par value is 1,000, and it has 5 years until maturity. And you paid $975 for this bond. After 1 year, you sell the bond for $965. So what happened? Let's go step by step. You paid $975 for this bond, okay? And after 1 year, the price decreased to $965. And for some reason, you decided to sell the bond. So in this case, first start with the coupon payments. Suppose that you have annual coupon payments. What is the coupon payment you obtained? 50. 5% coupon rate. So you got 50. So you got this 50. You sold the bond for $965. You bought the bond for $975. So there's a price depreciation. And the price you paid for the bond was $975. So your return on this bond is 4%. So my question is here, what is the yield to maturity? What do you think? What was the yield to maturity when you bought the bond? Do you think it was higher than 4% or lower than 4%? When you bought the bond at time 0, what was the yield to maturity? Okay, do you have any guesses?
Higher than 5.
You expect it to be higher than 5? Huh? So he said he thought about something very intelligent, very smart. Kudos to you. No, just you were good. You're good. So what did he think of? He said, okay, when I bought the bond, I paid $975, which is less than 1,000, right? So you bought the bond at a discount. What does it mean? What does it tell you about the relationship between coupon rate and, okay, price is lower than 1,000, 975. So it was at a discount, sold at a discount. What does it say about the relationship between coupon rates and yield to maturity? Smaller or bigger? Definitely write this on your cheat sheet for sure. Okay, don't get confused. So if it is sold at a discount, coupon rate should be lower than yield to maturity, right? Değil mi? Okuyoruz. Yes, it is at a discount. So coupon rate is less than yield to maturity. So coupon rate is 5%. in our example. So when you bought the bond, yield to maturity was higher than 5%. So actually, your return, your yield to maturity should be higher than 5. So you made something stupid. You sold the bond after 1 year and your return is 4%. If you didn't sell the bond, hold it until maturity, you would have get at least 5%. Because yield to maturity is higher than 5. This is important. Yield to maturity is your return on your bond if you hold the bond until maturity. If there's a change in interest rates in the economy, then your return on the bond when you sell the bond may be different than your yield to maturity. In this example, yield to maturity was higher than 5 when you bought the bond. After 1 year, the price of the bond decreased to 965, which means yield to maturity increased, right? So the price decreased. Remember the relationship, right? You bought the bond for 975, you sold it for 965, so probably yield to maturity decreased in the economy. So your return changed because of the change in yield to maturity in the economy. I think it got a little bit confusing for you. Let's look at this and one example. Hopefully it will be clearer. So suppose that you're looking at the price of two bonds. These are both third-tier bonds. They have same yield to maturities. Their return are the same. The only thing is their coupon rates are different. So 6% coupon paying one, it pays more coupon rate compared to yield to maturity. So it is sold at a premium. So its price starts from here. The other one is paying 2% coupon payment, where your yield to maturity is 4%. So it is sold at a discount. If you look at the price paths, interestingly, their prices should be both equal to 1,000 at maturity. Why? At the 30th year, both of them have a price of 1,000. Why?
There is no coupon.
Thank you. There's no coupon payment. The only money you're going to get is the face value. Remember, the value of all investments is the value of your future cash flows. At time 30, no coupon payments left. The only money you're going to get is 1,000, which is the value of the bond. So the price will be 1,000 at that day. So both of them, as you can see, their price path is like this. So normally, even if YTM doesn't change in the economy, the bonds whose price were sold at a premium, their price will decline until they get to 1,000. For the discount ones, their prices should go up to 1,000, even if there is yield to maturity doesn't change. This is a normal way of normal path for prices. So let's look at this example. This bond was a discount bond, right? 975. So normally, if yield to maturity didn't change in the economy, a discount bond price should increase as time passes. In this case, its price decreased, which should give you an idea about the change in yield to maturity. So this is not normal anymore. Yield to maturity changed. That's why the price changed, okay? So that's why rate of return was different than yield to maturity. If you buy a bond here, and if you sell this bond any time before the maturity, if yield to maturity in the economy didn't change, your return will be equal to yield to maturity. Your rate of return will be equal to yield to maturity. So rate of return will only be different than your yield to maturity if YTM in the economy changed during the life of the bond. Let me repeat it in Turkish one last time, and then we can move on. Şimdi bir tahvil aldınız. 30 yıllık bir tahvil aldığınızı düşünün. İskontolu olarak aldınız. Fiyatı buradan başladı. Şimdi normalde bu tahvili alıp 30 yıl boyunca elinizde tutarsanız sizin getiriniz %4 olacak. Herhangi bir bonoyu aldınız, sonuna kadar tuttunuz. Sizin getiriniz her zaman yield to maturity'ye eşit olacak. Arada satış yoksa. Tamam mı? O gün aldığınız zaman yield to maturity neyse getiriniz de o. Şimdi ne demiştik? Yield to maturity ekonomide değişebilir demiştik değil mi? Mesela birkaç sene sonra yok değişmesin, tamam mı? Ekonomide 30 sene boyunca yield to maturity bu bonolar için hiç değişmedi. O zaman bu arada ne zaman satarsanız satın sizin getiriniz yield to maturity'ye eşit olacak. Tamam mı? Basit. Buy the bond, hold until maturity. Your return is equal to yield to maturity. Buy the bond, sell it somewhere before the maturity. If the yield to maturity in the economy is the same for those kind of bonds, your return will be again equal to the yield to maturity when you bought the bond. Tamam, burada hiçbir şey yok. Şimdi sorun şu, arada tabii ki siz satmayı düşündüğünüz zaman ekonomideki faiz oranları değişmiş olabilir. O zaman bononun fiyatını etkileyen tek şey, şimdi normalde bononun fiyatını etkileyen tek şey ne? Ne kadar kupon payment'ım kaldı? Face value'mu ne zaman alacağım? Değil mi? Başka hiçbir şey yok. Çünkü R fix. Ama eğer ekonomideki discount rate değişirse bir de ne kadar kupon payment'ım kaldı? Face value ne zaman alacağım? Onları yeni iskonto oranıyla iskonto edeceğim. Sizin return'ünüzü etkileyen bir şey daha ortaya çıktı. Bakın bu örnekte mesela ne dedik? 975'e almışsınız. Bir sene sonra normalde fiyatın artması gerekiyor. Buradaki normal duruma göre bir sene sonra fiyatın artması gerekiyor. Çünkü fiyat yani maturity'de 1000 olmak zorunda biliyorsunuz. Yani pet böyle gitmek zorunda. Ama olmamış. Ne olmuş? Fiyat düşmüş. Yükseleceği yerde. Fiyatın düşme sebebi ne olabilir? Yield to maturity değişti. Demek ki benim buradaki return'üm yield to maturity'den farklı olacak. Ben rate of return'ümü hesapladım. Hesaplamada bir sorunuz var mı? Hesaplamada bir sorun yok. Burada hesapladık %4 getiri sağladı. O da ne? Arada aldığım kupon payment'la fiyattan ne kadar profitim oldu? Onları yaptık. Ondan sonra burada %4. Sonra ben dedim ki tamam buradaki bir yıllık return'ünüz %4. Peki eğer bunu satmasaydınız ve 5 sene boyunca tutsaydınız sizin getiriniz ne olacaktı? Eğer bunu burada satmasaydınız ve 5 sene boyunca tutsaydınız sizin getiriniz bonoyu aldığınız günkü ekonomideki yield to maturity'ye eşit olacaktı. O zaman da sordum. İlk sene mesela yield to maturity hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz? Ne olabilir? Hiç hesaplama yapmadan bana söyleyebilir misiniz? Oradan çok zekice bir şey geldi. Dediniz ki hocam price aldığım fiyat 1000'den düşük olduğuna göre bu iskontolu satılan bir bono. Ve biz biliyoruz ki iskontolu satılan bonolarda yield to maturity kupon rate'den yüksek. Soruda %5 kupon rate. O zaman aldığımız günkü yield to maturity en az %5'ti. Hiç hesap bile yapmadım. Ama bir sene sonra sattın %4 yaptın. Kötü bir şey yaptın. 5 sene boyunca tutsaydın elinde senin getirin %5 olacaktı. Arada ne oldu? Yield to maturity arttı ki fiyat düştü. Sen düşük fiyattan sattın. Tabii ki mantıksız. Değil mi? İlişkimiz bundan ibaret. Okay, so we have to stop here. Next week we have a question on this, and then I will talk about real and nominal interest rates, and then we're going to start stock valuation on Tuesday.